Hello folks, welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania with a breaking story out of South Africa where city press has seen messages that were communicated to Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament Emma Powell regarding the situation with Nicklin Jonas being rejected by the U.S. government back in May of 2025, something the South African government apparently has hidden from the public and gaslit and misled the public for a few months now, pretending that things were all hunky-dory and that the relationship had been reset based on the Oval Office meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump in late May. Well, that's pure fiction, as I said so on that day and continue to say so. In city press, the following. A Trump official says the U.S. government has been asking for months for someone other than Nicklin Jonas to be the South African envoy to the U.S. South Africa, which lacks diplomatic representation within the borders of its second largest trading partner. And that's the situation. Now, I've noted this since Ebrahim Rasool was sent packing earlier this year for his intemperate remarks about President Trump and Americans. For months, I've repeatedly pointed out that Pretoria is intentionally misleading South Africans with the willful collusion or blissful ignorance of South African media houses. No ambassador, no special envoy, no trade representative, or even a trade negotiation team in Washington. Yet the government of national unity claims they are negotiating good faith with USA. That's balderdash. There is no negotiation in good faith. There is no negotiation taking place for the most part. Now, after Vincent Magwenya and the ANC publicly attacked DA MP Emma Powell, Powell shared messages which she received from the Trump administration with City Press's sister publication Rapport after the presidency falsely accused her of spreading disinformation. Powell requested that the Trump official remain anonymous in order to protect that person's identity and relations with the United States. Now, according to those messages, the U.S. government rejected Jonas's diplomatic visa in May, and his credentials were recently denied. A South African business liaison in Washington said the U.S. government has been telling his clients for months that there is nobody to talk to on the South African government side. And I have made dozens of videos stating the exact same thing since this mess began on February 7th of 2025, nearly 6 months ago. City Press notes that Ramaphosa's appointment of Jonas as his special envoy to the U.S. on the 14th of April backfired within hours when the South African Broadcasting Corporation, state-owned media, revealed that Jonas had referred to Trump as a racist, a homophobe, and a narcissist back in 2020. Now, at the time, I said that was in his private capacity, wasn't in an official position, and he could have made the argument that that's how I felt at the time, that he's modified his views since then. But apparently that was enough to make him unwelcome. On May 19th, Ramaphosa announced Jonas would be part of his delegation to the White House to meet with Trump and his officials. However, during the 21 May meeting, Jonas wasn't present. And we find out 2 months later that Jonas's diplomatic visa was denied. So why did Ramaphosa lie to the world and tell us that he was going to be there when he didn't have a visa? It's fascinating that Vincent Magwenya rubbished MP Emma Powell over the revelation that Nicklin Jonas was denied a visa back in May. I say so because it now emerges in city press that Magwenya explained to Clement Manyatela, president in Washington for Talk Radio 702, that the White House expressed its displeasure about Jonas's presence shortly before the 21 May meeting at the White House. So what kind of nonsense is that? He obviously had been denied a visa, so what are you talking about? Yet the ANC kept to the bogus story that Jonas is a special envoy to America. After being embarrassed, for those actually listening to the propaganda coming out of Luthuli House, Ramaphosa suddenly changed his tune in early June, around the 10th of June, when he adjusted Nicklin Jonas's job description during an SABC TV interview, referring to him now as the envoy to North America. Suddenly it's North America, after he was rejected by Washington. But the whole point was to repair the damage Rasool caused, not curry favor with Ottawa. City Press's Davi Bunzire correctly notes this shift occurred despite the initial emphasis during Jonas's appointment on his role as negotiator, advocate of strategic partnerships, and a key liaison between South Africa's interests and U.S. officials and private sector leaders. So how was it North America? His role was the United States. They backpedaled. Magwenya stated that special envoys like Jonas do not need to submit diplomatic credentials to host countries like ambassadors or other diplomats. That's simply untrue, folks. That's gaslighting. Special envoys need to be accredited to the country, the multilateral organization, or the activity to whom they are to communicate. An envoy communicates diplomatically to a country, a multilateral organization, or an activity like the World Food Program or the European Union or Germany. A special envoy must communicate. In order to communicate, you must present your credentials and be accepted by that host country, that institution, or that activity. So Vincent Magwenya is just telling you fairy tales. Special envoys are only special envoys if they actually envoy with the other side. Otherwise, they're just the special advisor to the president. Now, Maguigna went on to attack the Democratic Alliance, saying the DA has positioned itself as part of a right-wing group attempting to leverage a foreign state to enforce changes to democratically develop national policies in our own country. Right-wing? The racist dog whistle that has virtually no currency in 2025. But they're too backward and blind to notice that. The ANC has accused Powell of racism and spreading false information. How? The government of South Africa is not a race. It's an elected government comprised of people of all races. It's supposed to serve all South Africans. So how does race come into it, aside from the ANC slandering Emma Powell? Meanwhile, with 30%, possibly 40% tariffs across the board due to go into effect in a matter of days, instead of sitting in Washington negotiating with the U.S., the governor of National Unity sent a delegation of bootlickers to supplicate themselves before the Chi-Com overlords for an entire week. We are now just 9 days away, 10 days away from these tariffs coming into effect. And instead of being in Washington, where there's no representative and has been no one since Ibrahim Rasool was sent packing, PNG, persona non grata, months ago, the ANC is in China. Parks Tao, the Trade, Industry and Competition Minister, and John Steenhuisen, the Agriculture Minister, ostensibly leading negotiations with the U.S. to avoid these tariffs or at least reduce them, were in China for an entire week for China-South Africa Investment Forum alongside Deputy President Paul Mashatile, while nobody was in America. Meanwhile, folks, South Africa's auto exports have already cratered, declining from 9,700 a year ago in the most recent reporting period to just 1,100 this year. That's with just a partial reporting period of a 25% auto tariff in effect since April. Imagine what happens when 30 or 40% kicks in on August 1st. Jobs have already been lost in the automobile sector in South Africa, with at least 141,000 direct employment jobs in that sector alone at risk. Not to mention the citrus industry in the Western Cape and all the ancillary businesses to support these industries. As I predicted, when they went behind closed doors in May after Ramaphosa made Trump wait nearly 30 minutes using West Africa time, arriving tardy to the White House, Trump no doubt issued preconditions to restore diplomatic relations with the United States. Now, I've mentioned several grievances, which include insults to America and acting against our national interests, but the Freedom Front Plus party leader, Member of Parliament Corné Mulder, came back from D.C. recently with a list of 4 preconditions which the Trump administration apparently presented back in May to the South African government. Land expropriation must occur at market-related compensation, as the Constitution calls for. Farm murders must be classified as a priority crime, which they're not. American companies must be exempt from South Africa's racist legislation, and the Kill the Boer chant must be publicly condemned. Corné Mulder requested a meeting with his coalition partner Ramaphosa to discuss Washington's demands. According to City Press, however, the presidency revealed last week that a meeting with Ramaphosa wouldn't occur, citing that governments do not negotiate through unofficial delegations. Of course, this is utter nonsense. Often the most successful diplomacy is through unofficial channels. I should know. I spent decades working in embassies across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. And how exactly is a member of parliament unofficial channel anyway? He's an elected member of parliament and part of your coalition. You would think you'd want to listen to someone in your coalition. But of course, this is the ANC. They're arrogant. They don't listen to anybody. City Press claims that several government sources also added that Mulder's preconditions have not been communicated to them officially by the U.S. government. Yeah, poppycock. Given the blatant, obvious pack of lies that we've covered in the past several minutes, emanating from Latuli House and the GNU, there is little to no credibility to those claims. One has to ask what exactly is going on in Cape Town, by the way. Is the ANC abusing public institutions for political smears and attacks? Last week, apparently the DA legal team demanded answers from Ramaphosa and Kubutsu Ntshavheni as to who authorized an intelligence investigation and the unauthorized disclosure of that classified information to the press about MP Emma Powell. So Powell, when put on the spot, revealed her source to City Press. Will they protect the source, or will they damage U.S. relations with South Africa further, which have been neglected and abused by the ANC, Latuli House, and the Government of National Unity? And that's the bottom line here, folks. There's no genuine effort here. They're in China. They don't care about the relationship with the U.S., and South Africans will suffer. They're already suffering. And the knock-on effect across the economy will be exponential. Not arithmetic, but exponential. Davi Root likes to say that it's going to have an impact, but it's not going to be that great. Well, I disagree. At least 2% of South Africa's GDP is going to be evaporated by these tariffs. And that will be devastating to an economy that's growing at 0.8% to begin with, which is less than inflation and less than population growth. And now you're going to lose another up to 2% of your economy, which is your exports to the United States, not sustainable. What say you, South Africa? What say you, world? Things are looking grim in South Africa. And this is all the ANC's doing. They've made this bed. Unfortunately, they won't have to lie in it. The elites will live high off the hog while South Africans suffer. What a tragedy.